Kia orana, bula vinaka, kia ora, and warm Pacific greetings. I'm Rochelle Stewart-Allen from Transparency International New Zealand, and it's a real honour to welcome you to this final webinar in our Pacific Environmental Governance series, Safeguarding our Pacific, Tackling Corruption and Protecting Communities. It's another cool winter's day here in Te Whanganui-a-Tara, Wellington, New Zealand, but my heart's warmed knowing that we are gathering across the oceans today. Thank you for making the time to be here. I'm going to start us off with a karakia. Kia tuturu tātou, kia manaaki tātou, kia whaihiranga tātou, kia tū hono hono tātou, whānau, whānau, haramai te toki, haumie huie tākie. We've learned how corruption undermines trust, how environmental crime impacts livelihoods, and how community-led action and Indigenous governance offer pathways of hope. So today, in this final session, we turn our focus directly to corruption, how it threatens people, land, and ocean, and how Pacific communities are responding with courage and integrity. I want to thank our partners at For Purpose, especially Zenaida, who keeps the technical side running smoothly in the background. And of course, this series would not be possible without the support of the New Zealand Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade and the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. So just a few housekeeping rules as we get started. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel afterwards. Please keep your microphones muted as internet connection can vary across our region. This is an information sharing event, so we welcome all levels of knowledge and understanding. Please use the chat to ask questions or share reflections. There's no wrong questions here, and there will be, after the speakers have talked, there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions of them and keep the talanoa going. At Transparency International, our values are integrity, courage, transparency, respect, and non-partisanship. We bring these values into this talanoa today, knowing we can all learn from each other and that every voice here matters. With that, it's my pleasure to hand over to our facilitator, Fenton Lutunatabua. Fenton is a Pacific climate advocate, storyteller, and facilitator, well known for creating inclusive spaces where dialogue, reflection, and collective action can thrive. So here's a real gift for bringing people together and lifting up Pacific voices in this series. We're so grateful to you, Fenton, for the skill and care that you've brought into guiding these talanoa. So bula vinaka, and over to you.
Vinakvakalevu, Rochelle, thank you so much for that. And if I may, I want to just take a moment to extend my sincerest gratitude to you, Rochelle, for all the incredible behind-the-scenes work that you, as well as Zenaida, have been holding down, and specifically for weaving together such an incredible lineup of speakers over the last month and a bit. Well, again, everyone, my name is Fenton Lutunatabua, and today is sadly the final webinar, 4 of 4 of TINZ's incredible webinar series. As Rochelle mentioned, today's webinar is titled Safeguarding Our Pacific, Tackling Corruption and Protecting Communities. To round out this webinar series, we will stay focused on the environment and specifically look at real stories of how anti-corruption and climate action comes to life at the front lines. We have the fortune of learning lessons from grassroots mobilizations, investigative journalism, and community advocacy. As someone who has worked at Transparency International Fiji, has a background in journalism, and spends a lot of my time thinking about community advocacy, I am beyond excited about today's webinar, and I look forward to exploring the links between corruption, climate change, and displacement. As always, thank you so much for being here. We are grateful for your presence, and today we get to hear from two amazing human beings, Arianne Kassman from Papua New Guinea and Charley Piringi from the Solomon Islands. Before I introduce our panelists, I would like to invite all of you to let us know in the chat where you are joining us in from and what brought you to this webinar. Now, as you're thinking through your responses, I'd like to take this moment to introduce the first of our two panelists. First up is Arianne Kassman. Arianne is the CEO of Transparency International Papua New Guinea and a leading voice in anti-corruption and civic engagement. Ari has been active since her youth. She champions public integrity, youth participation, and citizen-led reforms to strengthen governance in PNG. This is a little-known fact, but Arianne is also one of the founders of the Pacific Climate Warriors, an incredible network of young Pacific people working across the region to address the climate crisis and make sure that we all can steward the important places that we call home. Arianne, I'm so happy to see you. Thank you for being here. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Fenton. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar series. I am very honored to be joining you all this morning from PNG. Let me get straight into the presentation and just move to the next slide. A bit about TIPNG as an organization. So we are a non-government organization that's based here in Papua New Guinea. We are part of the TI Global Movement, but we are very local in our context and in the work that we do. Our work is mainly focused around making sure that we're raising awareness with our people and informing them about not just the impact of corruption, but what they can do to address corruption. We work with individuals, we work with government departments, schools, private or corporate organizations, really looking at what can we do as a whole of society approach to address this issue of corruption in Papua New Guinea. Next slide. So a lot of us look at corruption, and in our own organizations, we do have our own definitions of corruption, but I thought it would be important to just share the TI definition of corruption, which is the working definition that we use in the work that we do. So at TIPNG, we define corruption, as with the rest of the global movement, as the abuse of entrusted power for private gain. And as we know, abuse, you use something in a bad way or you misuse something. Entrusted power is about power that's been given to you, whether you've been appointed to a position or voted into a position. And private gain is really about anything that benefits yourself. So if you use something or misuse something in a bad way with the power that's been given to you by others for your own benefit, that is really what we define as corruption. And we see different examples of it throughout our daily lives. Next slide, please. For PNG, the impact of corruption are widely felt. We see it in how our people have access to public services. For ordinary citizens, corruption really means that we have poor health services, lack of school resources. It's also contributes to deteriorating infrastructure right throughout the country, and of course, unequal access to opportunities. And a lot of these issues or the impact that we see of corruption, unfortunately, is felt by almost 80% of the country. And so there's a lot of work that needs to be done to make sure that the money that belongs to the people, that is for the people, goes back to funding some of the basic services, the basic needs of the people, and building a country that our people deserve. Next slide, please. And so when we look at the impact of corruption, we can also look at it not just as the one-off bribery that might occur from time to time, or perhaps the one-off petty corruption that people talk about largely across Papua New Guinea. what's happened for Papua New Guinea, especially what we're seeing, is that what we've struggled with is really grand corruption or impunity and declining public trust in our own national institutions. On the slide that I have in front of you is a assessment that we did working with 26 public sector agencies on whether the laws of the agency, the legislation and the policies in the agency were sufficient and were being implemented. And so what we found for Papua New Guinea, unfortunately, is that only 5 of the 14 what we call pillars in the national integrity system showed that they were somewhat adequate, and the others have a very basic level of integrity. So although it is concerning that they fall short of having both an adequate legal framework and of course adequate actions in practice, there are 5 agencies or 5 pillars that we see are performing much better. This does not mean that it is all well and all good, and so a lot more work has to be done to ensure that we are bridging the gap between enforcement and ensuring that our people are getting what they deserve. But what we're seeing really is that there are a number of challenges in our public sector. We are looking at a very systematic level of corruption. And so what we need to do as civil society is not just about engaging with citizens, but looking at the opportunities to engage with the public sector as well, and driving reforms that can create the change that we need. Next slide, please. So some of the work that we've done as TIPNG in mobilizing citizens is really looking at how do we ensure citizens have the information that they need? How do we make sure that there is proactive disclosure of information? How do we get citizens to demand for information so that they can hold their leaders to account? And so we've done different things in terms of going out to communities, speaking on different issues, bringing together young people, whether it be through our Youth Against Corruption Association, looking at which coalitions or which partnerships we have to have specific to a sector. So if land grabbing is a particular issue in Papua New Guinea, we have to partner with the right organizations, community-based organizations, to look at what we need to do in those communities to try to safeguard our people. And then, of course, we look at bringing together people to observe elections, so that they can monitor the elections and report on elections, and then look at how we can use that report for further electoral reform. But that's not enough. We have to look at how we bring people together in an organized way. So setting up what we call coalitions that are focused on particular issues, that can look at what we need to do, either it be in the extractive sector or in the open government partnership space, or whether it be in a community coalition space. Next slide, please. So bringing people together, mobilizing citizens, is really about shifting the culture so that citizens see themselves not just as passive victims of corruption, but really actively demanding accountability. So what is civil society's role in building trust and transparency? Next slide. So I will speak more to what's worked with TIPNG, what we do, because I feel like that's really where it has allowed for us to help to bridge that gap for our communities here. First of all, around advocacy and awareness. And so what we find is empowering people with the tools, with the skills and information that they need to participate in the democratic process, not just by voting, but by observing in an election, gives them the ability to look at the elections, to reflect on the elections, and contribute to what can be done to fix the elections. We also look at working with partners, other partners, whether it be the PNG Electoral Commission or other government agencies, to look at how can we strengthen good governance in the actual conduct of our elections. And then we have our youth program. So how do we look at working with young people, making sure that they are empowered, but they also look at starting with themselves, making sure that they themselves are not corrupt in their conduct, they're transparent, they promote integrity, and they promote accountability. And then lastly, around identifying what areas of legislation, what areas of research are required, proposing policy solutions, looking at which key decision makers we need to inform, particularly for Papua New Guinea around the extractive sector, because it's a big part of our national budget. And of course, when we look at other issues around fisheries and logging, those are particular points of information that we want people to know about. We want them to know what the risks are around corruption and what can be done to safeguard these resources that are for our people. Next slide, please. The second area is really around research and analysis. So we don't want to just be speaking about corruption or where the corruption is occurring. We also want to make sure that we're backing this up with data. So for TIPNG, we rely heavily on making sure that we have our own data. We've researched, we've collected enough information. We've worked with agencies to also look at what the gaps are. And then we look at how we can use that research and analysis. But all of this information shows us that this is the evidence that we need to also be able to put forward our solutions. And as we know, people will accept solutions or be open to solutions if they know that there is evidence to support that this is the issue, this is why it's an issue, and this is what can be done to resolve this issue. Next slide, please. I think another key tool that's important in the governance space especially is around scorecards. And so we use scorecards particularly for the Auditor General's Office, looking at how how money is used, what's reported as being spent, and of course, how much has been lost to corruption. So when you look at Papua New Guinea, for example, we are a few years back with our Auditor General's reports. And so for TIPNG, we use scorecards as a way of highlighting the issues, highlighting that there are gaps in the system and that this is what we need. So in this particular case, what we are showing is that look, the Auditor General's Office has done their work, but unfortunately they haven't received adequate funding in order to provide updated reports. We are only going to be able to inform citizens and have citizens hold leaders to account if the information is up to date. So this is a key part of advocacy, is making sure that we're also using government information that's being put out as a tool in a condensed form, so using a scorecard format to show citizens that this is really what we can use to assess agencies, assess their efficiency, and then provide solutions on how we can improve what this agency is doing. Next slide, please. A key part of any work for civil society when it comes to building transparency and trust is around collaboration and partnerships. And so I have a few listed here on the slide, but I wanted to particularly look at the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, which is a multi-stakeholder group made up of private sector, of extractive sector, of government, and of civil society. And so why is this important for us? It's important for us because for Papua New Guinea, we know that we receive a lot of funding, a lot of the income to our national budget, a lot of funding that comes to particularly communities that are impacted by the extractive sector. A lot of money flows through. And what the EITI does is provides an opportunity for government to report what they receive and for industry to report what they pay to government. And then there's a process of, trying to see what's reported against each one, where the gaps are, and then what can be done to ensure that there are no gaps, that we actually know how much money is being received and where it's going to. And the role of civil society there is to really make sure that we have both industry and government participating, making sure that they are giving the correct figures, and making sure that when the recommendations are put forward for how you can improve your work in the sector, especially also around the environment, and making sure that any corporate social responsibility work is done properly. More, more importantly, that there is prior consent from communities. A lot of these issues come out of this EITI report, and they provide an opportunity for civil society to be able to say, this is what we feel is needed in the sector, this is what we feel industry should be doing, and it provides that opportunity to have one-on-one dialogue with these partners who we probably wouldn't be able to meet outside of the civil society space. Next slide, please. And so I've spoken about really monitoring state institutions, how that helps in building trust and transparency, especially around governance, the importance of equipping citizens with tools like scorecards to help to assess public services, and then around creating safe platforms for dialogue between citizens, between government, and between private institutions as well. All of these are important things to think about when we are working in the space of civil society. Look, we know that corruption is a challenge, but it is something that we can beat. It does require commitment, it requires strategic action, and it does require collective effort, lots of people working together to try to see what can be done. We as an organization, and of course across the region, remain committed to promoting integrity and accountability. But what I wanted to stress here today is that anti-corruption advocacy is not just about laws. It's really about changing mindsets and cultures. And so if you see or hear a lot about this culture of corruption that exists in different institutions, what we need to be reminding these institutions about is that traditionally, societies have always embraced a culture of transparency where things are done openly. So sometimes it's not about creating new things, but going back to what worked before in our own traditional settings. I'm a big believer, obviously, in grassroots mobilization, an important part of the work that we do. In addition to that, really looking at real accountability measures. This is really what changing mindsets and cultures is about. This is really what long-term impact can look like if we're working together. Lastly, when citizens do have the tools to hold their leaders accountable, when they have the information that's required so that they can address issues, when institutions open themselves to transparency, we begin to rebuild a trust in government, and we begin to really see what the foundation is, the foundation of the democracy that we have chosen as a country to live by. And I think that's it from me.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Arianne, for all of that. I mean, it's obvious just from that short presentation that TI-PNG has done a really good job with working with this like wide sector of the community. I wanted to especially say, I think the work that you all do around the advocacy and awareness raising sets of work is especially impressive. As someone that's attended and participated in the Mike Manning Youth Democracy Camp, I really do believe it's such a gift, and I really hope these camps and so much of the work that you do, even with the scorecards, can be replicated across the region. I can see it working in so many more spaces. And it's also good to just see again and again why research and analysis is necessary for informing action steps, right? So you're really going forward based on like actual evidence. And I'm looking forward to, unpacking some of that in our talanoa. So thank you for sharing that and all the work that you and the team do. It really is so great. And now I'd love to introduce our next speaker for the day, Charley Piringi. Charley is an award-winning environmental journalist known for exposing corruption and environmental harm linked to mining and logging in the Pacific. His reporting amplifies frontline voices and holds power to account with stories published by outlets like The Guardian and the OCCRP. Charley is based in the Solomon Islands and brings a strong local lens to regional issues of justice, governance, and environmental protection. Charley, I'm so excited to hear from you. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Let me just share my screen. Okay. Thank you everyone for your time, and thank you TI New Zealand for having us today. So I'm going straight to my presentation. So this is a photo from my recent tour to a remote province here in the Western Solomons. It's a nickel mining, somewhat illegal operation that's been going on. I mean, a lot of things, especially the processes, has not been followed. I will discuss further on this on the case studies. So this is that mining operation that currently going on in the Western Solomons. So yeah, like Fenton introduced me. That's my name and everything. So corruption in the Solomon Islands is like just like any like a lot of Pacific Islands will face issues of corruption, and yeah, the communities were always the ones that really facing the harsh realities on corruption issues been going on. So a bit of introduction to my presentation. Corruption actually undermines governance, like we'll know, development, justice in the Pacific, also with the communities that face environmental harm, like the photo we just seen earlier, and also exploitation of resources and inequalities within the communities. And also for safeguarding our Pacific, it requires a lot of work and accountability. And thank you for Transparency International and your partners across the Pacific for being helpful in transparency issues across the Pacific. It also require collective action, like you've been doing a great work on that. And with the corruption perception index for Solomon Islands, just for everyone to know where we're sitting, we're sitting on 76 out of 180 countries across the globe. So that's really alarming, especially our case here in the Solomons, and especially within the extractive sector and the logging. It's really a mess in there. This is one of the oldest mining company that existed in the country. This is Gold Ridge Mining. It's in this island, Goro Canal, where I'm staying now. It's been started since 1990s until now. A lot of companies coming and go, and now there's a Chinese company that currently operating there, and a lot of issues been going on. People are not happy with a lot of things going on. So the impact of mining and in the environment is like we all know, the exploitation of natural resources, especially when talking about mining. The setback for the Solomon Islands is that we have a really outdated laws, especially that governing the mining sector and also logging. So we have weak laws, and yeah, I've done a lot of work, especially on environmental investigative stories, and I've one of the cases that I will be discussing a bit later is on the renal mining. That's the one that actually had an impact. I think that I got a little bit support from Internews that support me to do the story on Renol mining. Renol is a small island, atoll island. It's actually a raised rock, and then the mining actually damaged the whole half of the island. And after I published that story, it's really like forced the government to take like they cancel the mining lease for that place. And then after that, they work on the new bill that currently before the parliament, which a good thing for the country. And even there's the bill is before the parliament now, a lot of other mining activities has been going on too. Also, loss of revenue for the communities and also the government. An example here is the one in Renol I'm talking about. It's a bauxite mining, and when they cancel the mining lease and the whole operation cease operating, they left, and 33 bauxite shipment that left the country worth millions of dollars that left, and they currently no payment been done until to date. They just leave the country, and the resource owners especially, they were really losers in their own land. And yeah, it also comes to because the weak enforcement of the laws and always sidelining the indigenous voices, like the one I'm talking about here. They lost everything to the miners. They left with a shipment and they have nothing. And they still fighting for that now. And also there's a long-term, I mean, we all know that mining is like, in a long run, it's really, especially when all the minerals are extracted, it always left nothing to the people. Only the environment is really damaged, and with the people as well. So like now we have the people in Renol, because it's only a raised rock, and only the soil that they have for gardening is the one, especially the way they dug up for the mineral, the nickel that they took out. So they have nothing, no place to plant their food. So now they depend on Honiara for their like living. They pay goods from Honiara. So talking about that Renol story, this is the case study on the illegal mining there. So this ship is an oil spill. I think we all know about this oil spill in Renol. That's during the mining, and they got this vessel came to load the mineral, and then it got crashed on a rock, and there's a huge disaster, the oil spill. So the mess there is still, people are still battling that in court. And yeah, I think recently this year, they took up the case to High Court, and they are working on it for the company to compensate the resource owners, especially for the oil spill. And with I mean, knowing pretty well, I mean, the sad thing about here is that knowing pretty well that the mining laws is really outdated, the government keep pushing for like new mining companies to coming in. Like they use the they use the COVID-19 as like a lot of critics. They say it's an excuse to waive processes, legal processes, so that investors can go and actually do mining activities without doing proper legal processes. So there's a mining in Isabel province, one of the islands here. They call it the fast tracking policy under the former prime minister, Manasseh Sogavare. Is really into the miners' pocket. So he used that policy with an excuse with the COVID-19 pandemic, as he want to use that policy to like waiver processes, so that excuse is to recover the economy after the pandemic. So a lot of, I mean, he has two mining companies currently operating in Isabel province, and also one in Choiseul, the one I saw in the picture earlier. So these processes are actually doing a lot of harm because they haven't done a lot of like prospecting and other processes that is supposed to be doing. They just bypass everything and straight into mining. And a lot of issues, especially with the land or resource owners, are talking, and a lot of things been going on. So coming back to protecting the communities, like what I've just talked about earlier, we just need to strengthen, especially landowners' right, participation, and especially like talking about us. The miners are bypassing the legal processes and doing their own thing now. So we have to work together with the resource owners, and also to ensure fair compensation, like the 53 shipment that left. There's nothing for the country, there's nothing for the resource owners. People have been left with nothing. Also in Choiseul, the one that currently going on, shipment, like 5 shipment have left. No, I mean, the law says they have to pay the royalties 90 days after the shipment. But then now it's like 5 shipment left since the beginning of the year, and nothing's coming in for the people. And also we need to promote sustainable development practices by working together with everyone, and hoping the government will support us. That's another question. And local watchdog support for local watchdogs, like Transparency Solomon Islands here is really doing a good work. They have recently released a survey on this mining in Choiseul province, the one I'm talking about. It's really forcing the government to act. And also they've been helping me a lot with this investigation that I'm about to publish on the Choiseul operation. And yeah, a support for local, especially in investigative journalism work like the one we are doing. And the path forward is, yeah, we really need a regional cooperation and stronger legal framework. And like this kind of talanoa sessions, it will really help us find a way forward, how we can support each other in the fight against this corruption thing. And we also need to involve a lot of in the independent oversight bodies, especially with the legal people and everyone to support the communities. Also with education and awareness for citizens, the sad thing about Solomon Islands is that we have a very low, I mean, a high illiteracy level. So a lot of people are just staying out of ignorance, and they don't mind what's going on until it's too late for them, which is a thing that the government need to serious about, addressing education, raising education standard in the country. So a lot of people have been like, especially what's been going on now, the so-called investors will come in with a lot of money and start paying off $500 or whatever for the people just to sign up their land. So it's been going on for a long time now. And also needs a global partnership for fight corruption, like Transparency International have been doing with its partners, and been a great work going on. And also the commitment to protecting the Pacific people and the environment. So this is my recent photo in Choiseul province. Upstream along this river, there's a mining that operating upstream. And this is the sediment buildup and the rivers are drying up. So that's, I mean, in terms of environmental impact of mining, that's been going on now. These are mangroves. And yeah, to conclude, safeguarding our Pacific is about more than just fighting corruption. It's about protecting our people, our cultures, our environment, and our future generation. Thank you, Thomas.
Charlie, thank you so much. I'm just sitting here and really appreciating these perspectives on the Solomon Islands. I'm recognizing that there's still so much about the region I have to learn and am learning. So thank you very much for helping me understand. And also, I know this work isn't easy. So if I don't have an opportunity to say thank you again, but really from the bottom of my heart, thank you for exposing the role of extractive industries in the Solomon Islands, especially its ongoing exploitation on the environment. And also the reminder that these impacts are not only immediate, but also long-term, right? And that's often something people just forget, like everything that they do now will have impacts on us for generations to come. So I appreciate those perspectives. Thank you very much. So now we're going to transition into the sort of like talanoa Q&A part of our panel. We'll have about 10 to 15 minutes for that. And as always, if anyone that's in the room with us right now has questions for our panelists, please put them in the chat. Would love to hear from you. I'm actually going to start with questions from the chat, if that's okay. And I have a question from Ezra, right? So a little bit of a setup for Ezra's question. Historically, Western countries want to instill the democracy and union movements within Pacific countries to improve political and economic systems and practices. Do you believe these external frameworks will improve corruption and protect communities in the Pacific region? Arianne or Charlie, either of you can go first.
So I can start because I think it's a common question. We see it right across the Pacific. We see different organizations, international organizations come in and, of course, try to share what they have. I think the challenge that I see a lot of the time is around context. So we do want to learn from what is working in different countries. But it's so important that there is an understanding, number one, of the context that you're working in. The people, the type of institutions that they have, and then of course looking at some of the cultural understandings. I think, as Charlie mentioned, right across the Pacific and so clearly in our own PNG constitution, yes, we understand we have our constitution and it safeguards the country, and it is our what we call our mama law. But there's an acknowledgement at the start of our constitution of our cultural beliefs. Our traditional or customary laws are also an important integral part of our communities. So it's also understanding how these communities work. One of the things that we find in PNG, and like obviously a lot of people see Transparency International and they think, oh, it's an international organization. But we are locally registered. We are a PNG organization. And so we put a lot of work into making sure that when we're coming up with solutions, we're working with the people so we can share ideas, share best practice from around the world. But there needs to be discussion with people on the ground, with people that are part of community-based organizations or within government structures to understand what is the real issue. What is the challenge that you're facing that's not allowing you to do the right thing, or make sure that you're espousing the right values. One of the other things we find in private sector organizations, when they have rules and policies in place, people follow those rules. It's when they come out, that's where the challenges are. And so in traditional societies, you have community values, understandings there. So there's a way that you behave in society. Westernization, very fast for a lot of the Pacific nations, has made us want to also try to catch up as quickly as possible. And we've lost some of that. So we need to make sure that as Pacific Islanders, we go back to what we know. We say, yep, we hear you. We understand that this has worked in your context. We will see how this works in our context. So I would say a lot more listening, a lot more discussion and engagement is important, because we do value it, but we do want to do it on our own terms. And I think for Pacific Islanders, it's important that we also understand that we have a responsibility to our people. And that responsibility means that if we're in this position where we have access to all of these proposals that are coming through and these new ways of working or doing things, we ourselves try to understand that and then look at how that would relate to our context, so that we're always taking that into consideration. None of us would want someone else to come into our homes and tell us what to do. And so we need to make sure that when we are inviting people or people want to come into our homes, that they also understand where we are coming from, who we are as a people, and what we want to see for our people and for our country.
Love that, Arianne. Looking back to move forward. Yeah. Charley.
Yeah, like Arianne stated, I think I really agree with what she said. I mean, all these international frameworks are coming in, and we also have our local custom and cultures and stuff too. And I would like to see if these external frameworks can also take into account what the local knowledge and also the local, like the cultures of the people too, so that they can work hand in hand, so that because at some extent, something that might be seen like corrupt, I mean, we seen as corruption in the Western, especially Western cultures, will also seen in the Melanesia or in the Pacific way as a way of like helping people and stuff. So those areas need to be like, they need to work together and see how they can harmonize all these areas and going forward.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, Charlie. I also, with what you just shared, Charlie, I'm reminded of what the invitation that Arianne gave to us in her sort of presentation is like the to reorient to transparency in the ways that our old people did, right? That's something that's true to Pacific culture, and just bringing that alive again is so important and necessary. Charlie, there's
Fenton, if I
yeah,
can
go ahead,
just
Ari.
add,
Yeah.
so like what Charlie is saying about our society. So when people did things before for each other, they did it for
Mm,
the good of the whole community. The issue we have now is that the influence has resulted in people doing things to benefit themselves. So again, this understanding that we know what the right thing to do is because we were raised in these cultures. These are the communities that we come from. We know what basic respect is, not just for each other as people, but for the land and for people's property. So for us as Pacific Islanders, it's really going back to what we know, and ensuring that we don't lose that as we're trying to transition into this modern, fast-paced world.
yeah. Yeah, it's like the potential loss of like deep values of reciprocity within a capitalistic system, right? Um, yeah. Charlie, there was a request here from Kath Wallace. If you had any links to these minds and companies, and Kath Wallace would also love to hear. I'm sorry, they're stating that we also hear virtually identical arguments for fast tracking, which are excluding public participation and overriding legislation and environmental protection. Just a little comment there from Kath that I wanted to bring to your attention. And then question here for you, Charley and Arianne. Also, feel free to dive in if you feel like. Charley, to your knowledge, has the Solomon Island governments demonstrated formal interest in re-signing to the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative Global Standard? A little bit of context here, Solomon Islands withdrew in 2018, and it would be interesting to hear if this is a possibility, particularly in light of the renewed focus on transparency and accountability in the extractive sector.
Thank you. So it's really I like that initiative, especially the EITI. It's been here some times ago, and then the new government, I should say, it's the corrupt government, the Sugawara-led government came in, and then they do away with it, knowing pretty well they were like going to corrupt the system, especially with them giving out mining leases for their cronies, and it's been going on now. And with the new government, I don't confirm it from from them, but I heard someone talking about the new government is going to get that initiative back. So that's what I heard, but it's not really confirmed. I'll find out. But it would be really nice if they get that EITI thing come and like stay here again.
And I can just add on to that. So I have been I have been connected to your ministry, the Solomon Islands Ministry of Treasury and Finance, to look at how we can assist with restarting EITI. Should state that TIPNG, we're part of EITI here in PNG. We actually had to work, I think, 10 years ago to get it introduced into Papua New Guinea and get our Department of Treasury to take over. So we've been connected to your Ministry of Treasury and Finance, and I've also included our colleagues with TI Solomons to make sure that they are also engaged in this process. And I think, Charley, now that I have been introduced to you on this talanoa, I'll make sure that you're also part of that, because I think that journalism also plays a very active role in making sure that information is shared, and that government and these extractive sector industries are also open to sharing information. Looking at just the impacts in Solomon Islands, especially, I think it's definitely time to have something like this, but also to look at, really actively, how can we stop the fast tracking of these mining licensing or mining projects, because they seem to be happening at a faster rate than I even thought. So it would be really good for us to also work together with you. I think Michelle from PNRGC is on this call, and so we can get in touch with you after to look at how we can make sure that Solomon Islands is part of this process as well.
Yeah, really glad to hear that, Ari. And it's just amazing what sort of networking can do, right? And as like direct follow-ups to a space like this. And I'm also wondering, Arianne, you had shared a lot about like one of the big sets of work that TIPNG does is like successful coalition and partnership building, right? And this has to happen across the board. This is how intersectionality comes alive. This is what it means to be part of a movement that's pushing for anti-corruption, for better governance, and for more transparency. I'm curious if you would be able to share just any lessons or reflections around this coalition and partnership building work that you might have.
Yeah, thanks, Fenton. And I'll probably use the Community Coalition Against Corruption as an example. as I speak to this. So the coalition itself is co-chaired by TIPNG and the Media Council of PNG. The Media Council is like the umbrella body for media organizations or journalists in Papua New Guinea. And so the co-chairing just makes sure that any issues that are discussed by the coalition, you have these two that will co-chairs that will speak on behalf of the coalition. But what we did was we tried to make sure we were having a greater section of the community. So we also have trade unions that are part of this, community-based organizations, the churches, which are so important, such a big network in each specific country. And so they have the greatest reach when you look at it. And then we looked at, other international NGOs that might be interested, and of course, local NGOs as well. There are some private sector organizations that have joined the coalition. They don't just look at corruption, which has been an interesting journey for us. They actually have 13 issues that they look at, ranging from different things. It could be with tax, it could be with what Solomon Islands have as a constituency funds. We also have here in PNG. And then, of course, logging land is another one that's an issue that they look at. And what we've learned from these coalitions is that you can't have too much structure. It has got to be a loose network of people that come together. The issues have to be organic. They come from the bottom up. The work of the coalition, the work of the technical working group is to gather what the members want to prioritize and to look at, where do we need to focus. So this coalition, for example, meets every 2 years for a national meeting, but in between has set up smaller, what we would call technical working groups, looking into different, I think it's 13 core issues. And you only, volunteer to go into the group that you feel your organization can add value to. So we keep the network fairly loose to allow for people to sort of go and come when they feel like they can. As we know, civil society don't have as much funding and resources. So this is also an opportunity for us to pool resources together, and organizations that are more established can support those that need that support as well. So another key part of the network is being able to provide support to each organization, provide leadership where it's needed, and more importantly, gather information that people need, ask them what they want to do with the information. Do they need further trainings? Basic things are still important for a lot of communities. How do you advocate? How do you go out? How do you get your member of parliament to hear what you're saying? All of these things, you need to be in touch with what the people want. But also, I think the last point I wanted to say about partnering with the churches, and I know this for PNG, and I'm sure it's the same across the Pacific, but for PNG, the churches, wherever the government cannot reach, the church is there. They provide services such as education, and they provide services such as health. And so they have an opportunity to also look at, what service delivery looks like on the ground and where they can partner with government. But more importantly, they can also share information to the people, with the people, and then act as a sort of feedback mechanism, because we don't want everything to just be from the capital city down. We also want people to tell us, no, you're actually doing this wrong as a coalition, and this is what we think you need to focus on. And then we have to have a discussion and decide, is this really what we want to do, and move forward. So my last lesson, I would say, is really making sure that there's a mechanism in place that allows for people on the ground to give their priorities, what they see are issues, how they think we should be doing work, and really taking up that feedback, making sure that we're communicating back with them. That's probably the most important part of a coalition, is not just with the organizations that are part of it, but with the actual people on the ground that make these organizations happen.
Yeah, I hear you on closing those feedback loops as often as possible as well, Arianne. I have at least two more questions for each of you, for you both, sorry. So I just want to say out loud again the invitation if anyone else has any questions to please put them in the chat. But Charley, this one is for you. So Arianne highlighted the importance of journalists like yourself in making things visible and sharing information in timely ways. I'm curious if you've seen the sort of onset of misinformation and disinformation across the region become more and more of a threat in your work, and sort of what are some of the ways that you actively counter that, if at all?
So yeah, these are real issues and threats that been going on, especially with the digital age we are currently in. Misinformation and disinformation are really like almost everyday thing. And it all, I mean, the thing is that it comes back to how, for me, I normally like always have to fact check and verify whatever information I'm taking. And yeah, we are within our small organization. We are so fortunate to have a fact checker desk, so that whatever information and stories we do and about to publish, we have to run it through our fact checker to make sure that all the information are verified. And yeah, it's really a big issue, especially in the Pacific. I mean, everywhere. So, I mean, what I can say is that we have to always check whether the information we are getting are accurate or are this real information. Because especially with the rise of AI now, that's a huge challenge for us. That's why we really need a fact checker desk to always verify information.
Absolutely. Thank you, Charley. And then now just a question for you both. And this is, in the context of looking back to move forward. My question for both of you is, what would you say are the ways in which we can strengthen solidarity across generations, sorry, from elders to young and everyone in between, to sort of make sure that Pacific communities are constantly safeguarding for the future?
So I think I go first. I just my thought on that. I think it's really, I mean, thank you for the very important question. And it would be really challenging, especially trying to like connect the connection between the older generation to the young generation. And like now the young generation are so into like social media and everything, and sometimes might not want to listen to the talanoa or with the elders, and that's really a challenge. And like organizing talanoa sessions like this, and I would like to see like every time and with every involving a lot of youth and elderly people talking over not only mining or whatever, but a lot of issues, societal issues. That would be a way forward addressing these pressing issues we're facing daily. Yeah, that's my take on it.
Thanks, Charley. Arianne?
Yeah, I think, and I smile when you ask this question because we all know that it's a challenge in the Pacific. But the thing about all these issues that we're facing in each of our countries across the region is that doesn't care how old we are. It's just affecting all of us. So one of the key things we try to talk to young people about is that like we understand that you're in an age where you have so much access to information. Sometimes you don't know what to do with that information, but it's really important that you know how to use AI, not to, unfortunately what it's being used now for, to fill in all the gaps on everything, but using it really as a tool. Teach yourself to be better. Don't teach yourself to rely on, this easy access is going to get you through most things in life. You have an older generation that didn't have that level of access to information, but they were able to question things. They were able to make decisions, informed decisions. And so there is a learning that we can gain from speaking to them and speaking of their experiences. I've always found in, all different rooms that I've been in, there is always this group of the older generation that will say, we paved the way for you, it was our hard work that made everything possible. And then you have the younger generation, as Charlie said, all hooked up to social media and not paying attention to what's happening around them. Bridging all of this means telling them when issues of corruption happen, when land grabbing happens, when mining affects communities, it's all of us, our land that's going. Our land, as we know, is our livelihood. It's what keeps us as a people together, and we're connected to that. So young or old, whatever we have done in our spaces, all of this is being taken away because we're not being aware of what's happening around us. We're not communicating with each other. But there's lessons we can learn from past generations. There's new things we can learn from the younger generation as well. There is a point that we have to come together. And that point is really that if we don't do this now, there will never be another opportunity to change the way things are. I hear what's happening in Solomon Islands, and I know that just like PNG, we have a large youth bulge. What is happening to that youth bulge? Do they have access to education? Is it just built up frustration that's causing, widespread violence, which we've experienced unfortunately in PNG? What is it that's making these young people feel like they need to participate in these activities, engage in these activities, and what can the older generation teach us? I wanted to end off with a final point around a session that I attended recently, where they talked about how much we've lost our identity because of this fast-paced world that we're living in. And in that conversation, I realized that I was trying to look at, creating an identity as Papua New Guineans, that one single identity that we could all sort of say, okay, yes, we're Papua New Guineans. And you all, both you and all those that have joined on this webinar know that PNG is known for being a land of 1,000 tribes, over 700 languages. So how do you unite a people like that? And I was reminded in that session that our people was united 50 years ago, that they were able to get independence without any bloodshed. And so it's possible to do these things in peace, to do these things in harmony, and not to start off with all the negativity, because we could have easily started off by saying, this is how we were treated by our colonial masters, and so this is how we will treat them now that we've gained independence. What we saw was our forefathers saying, this is how we will move forward as a nation. We will protect our natural resources. We will stick to our PNG ways. We will protect our people, and we will protect our land, and we'll protect our constitution. And so for me, that really sets the foundation for the older generation saying, this is how we this is what we want for future generations. And for me, it's just future generations understanding that all of that was done to set a better path for us. It's really how we use this opportunity that we have to move forward and make a better country for ourselves.
Thank you so much for that, Arianne. What a sort of great call to action, right? Especially for us as because we could look at ourselves, us that's doing this work right now, as the bridging generation, because we know that those that came before us had tools that they needed and were necessary to navigate the times that they're in. We know as well that those that come after us will definitely have a different set of tools to navigate the times that we will. And so that they find find themselves in. So it's super important, like you said, Charlie, that these intergenerational conversations continue to happen, these talanoas continue to happen, and we continue to advocate for spaces like these so we can make sure that we're passing on what's needed and saying, thanks, that was useful at one point. It is no longer useful for me right now. So we'll put it to the side. I just wanted to thank you both for such an incredible time that we had together, Arianne and Charlie. I've learned so much. I'm so grateful. Thank you for sharing so much of your wisdom and your experiences so generously. I've had such a great time. And now I'm going to hand us back to Rochelle to close us out. Rochelle.
Kia ora. Thanks, Fenton. Thank you all for joining us today. As we close this session out of our Pacific Environmental Governance series, I feel a little bit sad about that because it's just been amazing. But I want to really acknowledge the richness of the talanoa that both Arianne and Charlie and Fenton have brought today, but also the other speakers in the rest of the series as well. So we've heard stories of courage and integrity and community action, voices from the grassroots reminding us that safeguarding our Pacific is both urgent and deeply possible when we work together. So a heartfelt thank you to the speakers for your honesty and insight, to Fenton for weaving the voices together with such skill and care. And to all of you for taking the time to connect across the oceans. This is the last of our environmental governance series, but the talanoa will continue. In October, we're really excited for our next series already in the planning on Pacific Women in Politics. It'll feature 2 powerful roundtables with former members of Parliament, civil society leaders, and advocates sharing their experiences and insights. So we warmly encourage you to sign up to be part of these conversations. After today, you'll get a link in about 15 minutes. It'll be the survey as well as a link to enroll in the next series coming up. So your input is incredibly valuable for us. It helps us shape the future webinars and ensures that they truly meet the need of the Pacific communities. If you're not on our mailing list, you can add your email to the bottom of that survey and we'll add you to our database and you'll get future events invites coming up so you don't have to keep monitoring what we're up to. So I'll close us off with an Irish blessing, which comes from my whakapapa. May your joys be as deep as the oceans, your troubles as light as its foam, and may you find sweet peace of mind wherever you may roam. So we close today grounded in our shared values, integrity, courage, transparency, respect, and solidarity. May we each leave renewed in our commitment to protect our lands, our oceans, and our peoples. Whakawhitai, me tāki, vinaka vakalevu, kia ora, and thank you, and warm blessings for the journey ahead.